Hi, everybody, and welcome. We'll give everybody a chance to get logged in here, and we will begin shortly. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome. We'll give folks just a couple of seconds to get logged in here, and we will begin our webinar shortly. Again, welcome, everybody. We are just letting folks get logged in, and we will begin shortly. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, good afternoon and welcome, everybody. We are glad to have you with us today, as this is the IBM, Panasonic, and Fujitsu Branded Products, Related Services, and Cloud Services. This is request for offer number DIR-CPO-TMP-565, presented on Thursday, February 2nd at 2 p.m. Next slide. So we just want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items. A reminder, you can change your audio by switching between the computer audio and your phone. A reminder that all the attendees today are muted, but if you can real quick, please raise your hand and let us know that that you hear us clearly and that we do have a good connection with you today. We do have weather in the Austin area, so hopefully you're hearing us loud and clear today. Okay, I see a couple of hands going up. Thank you very much. So a reminder, please open the Q&A panel and put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will take time to answer those today during the webinar. Please don't use the chat for questions, as we do monitor those in the Q&A box. We will make the handout available, and a recording of the pre-bid webinar will also be made available after the presentation is completed today. Next slide. So your speakers today, my name's Tom Hay. I'm part of the outreach and training team here at DIR. You will hear from Laura Zarate, who is a hub coordinator here with DIR. Jared Fortenberry is the procurement lead for this RFO. You will hear from him today. You will hear from Marie Cohan talking about accessibility requirements for this RFO. She's our statewide digital accessibility program manager. And also with us today is Stephanie Harrison, who is our director of cooperative procurements here at DIR. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jared, and he will cover the agenda and today's presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jared Fortenberry, as Tom said. Just to start off, I want to go over the agenda, what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to go over some of the items that are under our RFO here. So we're going to have an overview. We're going to discuss the contents, the scope of the RFO. We'll go over the evaluation criteria, the term of contracts, our schedule for this solicitation. We're going to cover hub questions or hub issues, our pricing sheet, and our accessibility or EIR concerns. We'll go over general information. We'll give you some information regarding our BidStamp BIS, our vendor information system portal. We're going to talk about what you have to submit. Then we'll take a little bit of a break. We'll sort of gather all of our questions, and we'll work through those questions to provide responses. So I would say none of the responses that are provided in this presentation are final. So what we will do is we'll take these questions and provide final responses in an addendum that we will post on the ESCD. And then we will come to a close. Next slide, please. So to start off our overview, the purpose of this RFO is to solicit responses from potential vendors to provide IBM, Panasonic, and Fujitsu branded products and related services and cloud services, and those are branded cloud services, to the state of Texas, acting by and through the Department of Information Resources. This solicitation is a rebid of DIR-CPO-TMP-565, which was titled IBM, Panasonic, and Fujitsu branded products and related services and cloud service. We have the ability and intend to make multiple awards from this RFO. Next slide, please. So here we have some historical sales. That first table that you see is DIR cooperative contract sales for the past few years as a whole, not specifically this contract. So you can see that's gone up considerably from $2.045 billion in 2019 to about $3.050 billion in 2022. On the right, you'll see a table that shows the past few years of sales for this contract. So you'll see in 2020, there was about, and that's also in the bottom left there, the actual numbers, about 48 million-ish. In 2021, there was about 58 million. And then in FY22, there was about 47 million. So for the past few years, the total would be around 152 million for this specific contract, or the contracts that resulted from the prior solicitation. Next slide, please. So the RFO contents. So we're looking at attachments 1 through 5 and exhibits A through K. Attachment 1 will be the sample contract for products and services contracts. That gives you an idea of what a contract is ultimately going to look like, although there will be some changes depending on how negotiations go and changes from here to there. Attachment 2 is Appendix A. That's DIR standard terms and conditions for products and services contracts. Attachment 3, services agreement template. Attachment 4 is a master lease agreement template, and attachment 5 is your master operating lease agreement template. I will say for the services agreement, we have had the situation where vendors have their own services agreement. It is possible to submit that and have that reviewed and approved, just to keep that in mind. Exhibit A is respondent information. Exhibit B is your history and experience. And I will say, whenever you're looking at your history and experience document, we are having 2 different evaluations on this solicitation, right? One is for products and related services, branded products and related services, and one is for branded cloud services. So whenever you're filling out your exhibit B, there may be 2 sections where it says, if you're bidding on both categories, you're going to need to provide documentation that represents your experience for both. So read that carefully and please fill it out as it's written. Exhibit C is your contract marketing and customer support plan. Exhibit D is the itemized pricing sheet, and Exhibit E is your reference form. Those are references that are going to be submitted with your response. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, I think we may have, go back up one, sorry. Looks like F is on the bottom there. I didn't see that. That's going to be your reference release of liability form. We'll discuss that a little bit later on. Okay, next slide, please. Exhibit G is your VPAT. That's some of our EIR stuff. That's the G, H, and I are our accessibility documentation. So that's the VPAT, the VADSIR, and the PDAA. We'll go over those. Actually, Marie will go over those a little bit later. Exhibit J is our hub subcontracting plan sample form that will have to be submitted with your response. And Exhibit K is your EDGAR certification form. Next slide, please. Okay, so request for offer. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. So the term of the contract in section 2.1 or 2.10, excuse me, the term shall be 2 years, the initial term commencing on the last date of approval by DIR and a successful vendor. The contract will renew automatically in 1 optional 2-year renewal and 1 optional 1-year renewal under the same terms and conditions unless either party provides notice to the other party 60 days in advance of the renewal date stating that the party wishes to discuss modification of terms or to not renew, excuse me. Next slide. And here is our schedule. So this is listed in section 3.3.1 of the RFO. January 20th, it was posted. February 2nd, which is today, we are doing our pre-proposal webinar. On the 4th, that is the deadline for submitting questions. So as I said, questions that are presented during this pre-bid or that are given to us during the pre-bid, we'll make a note of and we'll address those in an addendum. So you have 2 days from the end of this pre-bid to submit questions. From there, I've given myself a little bit of time to address those questions and put those into an addendum to post. The date that we have for questions to be answered is estimated because we don't know what kind of response we're going to get. If I get 150 questions, that may change, but we'll do our best to get those posted by that deadline. The deadline for vendor references and for submitting your response to the RFO is February 28th, 2023 at 2 o'clock. Please note that 2 o'clock deadline is that is when our system will shut the gates. We can't accept anything past that time. Our hands are tied. So please make sure that you allow enough time for potential IT issues or submission issues so that you're sure that your submission makes it through. And then March 1st is when we anticipate the evaluations will start, oral presentations if needed, and negotiations and contract execution. Next slide, please. So our evaluation criteria, that'll be in section 4.2. For IBM, Fujitsu, Panasonic branded products and related services, and you'll remember I said there are going to be 2 evaluations. So pricing will be 40%, the respondent history and experience will be 30%, and respondent's contract marketing and customer support plan will be 30% of that total. For IBM, Fujitsu, and Panasonic branded cloud services, pricing will be 30%, the respondent history and experience will be 40%, and respondent's contract marketing and customer support plan will be 30% of that total score. Next slide, please. Exhibits A, B, and C, respondent information. I talked a little bit about this earlier. It has to be filled out in its entirety and signed by an officer or agent empowered to contractually bind the respondent. You also need to complete the canceled contract references if that applies. You'll see it in there whenever you pull that document. I can't stress enough, please make sure this is signed. It is absolutely necessary. Exhibit B, your respondent history and experience. So you'll be providing a detailed response to each question, detailing the respondent's history and experience in providing the products and services proposed. Like I said, because we have 2 different evaluations, there's parts of the experience document that you'll have to fill out. So we'll ask for experience regarding if you're bidding on category A, products and related services, or if you're responding to category B, cloud services. If you're doing both, you'll need to provide answers to those questions for both. And they're clearly marked in Exhibit B, so you shouldn't have any issues. Exhibit C is your contract marketing and customer support plan. So you'll have to provide a plan that describes your ability and strategy for promoting and supporting the contract if awarded to DIR's customers. Next slide, please. Exhibits D, E, and F. Exhibit D is your itemized price sheet. You'll have to submit specific pricing for products and services that are requested. Respondent has to respond as instructed in Exhibit D, itemized price spreadsheet. And there are instructions in that spreadsheet on how to fill that out. Exhibit E, your vendor references. So you have to send your Exhibit D reference form to a minimum of 3 companies or government agencies, and those references have to respond to DIR on the form provided. And there's an email that's provided on that form to where they need to send those references. So they need to respond to us on the form provided by the due date in order to be considered for evaluation. And this is important. You cannot submit the reference form for your references. They have to come from the references to the email that's indicated on that document. Exhibit F, respondent release of liability for references. So if it's required for all canceled contracts, and you'll have listed those in your respondent information form, Exhibit A. So it's required for all canceled contracts and must be provided to DIR with respondent's proposal. Next slide, please. Exhibit G is, these are our accessibility documents. So you have to provide a completed voluntary product accessibility template or VPAT for all commercial off-the-shelf products. Your VADSER is Exhibit H, and you have to provide a completed VADSER for all proposed development services listed in Exhibit D. And Exhibit I is your PDAA. You have to provide a policy-driven adoption for accessibility form for your vendor self-assessment. And again, we're going to go into greater detail when Maria talks about the accessibility component. Next slide, please. Exhibits J and K, your historically underutilized business form sample or hub form. Respondents have to provide their HSP form as instructed in 3.4.1, which is, let's see. Yeah, so you can get the latest form. There's a link in the RFO where you can access that latest form, the latest version, if there is a change. Exhibit K is your EDGAR certification form. You have to provide the EDGAR form as requested in 3.6.1, federal requirements to this RFO. Next. The scope of this contract. So we are intending to contract with qualified vendors for IBM, Panasonic, and Fujitsu branded hardware, software, and related services and cloud services to create a contract vehicle that satisfies DIR's statewide procurement requirements for those products and services. We're also trying to improve the efficiency of the procurement process by shortening the time required for our customers to procure the specified products and services. So one note on related services, there are any value-added services that respondent can perform as related to the proposed products and cloud services. They include, but are not limited to, product installation, warranty, maintenance and support, managed services, and product training. Any respondent offering product-related services must submit a description of those services and the related pricing in the pricing sheet. One note on related services is to sell related services, you have to have a corresponding product. Or so related services, as far as the category of branded products and related services, you can't just sell related services. It has to be tied to some purchase that was made for a product that you offer on branded products as well. Does that make sense? If anybody has questions, we'll address that in a minute. Next slide, please. The scope continued, cloud services. So we intend to provide cloud services for these branded cloud services for our customers. They follow the National Institute of Standards and Technology definition of cloud computing. That's in Special Publication 800-145. Each customer determines when cloud services are appropriate for their business needs and identify the precise services to be utilized, then creates plans for implementation. Next slide, please. So there are some categories that will not be covered by this solicitation. We'll go through those really quickly. So cloud assessment services will not be included. It was previously solicited by us here at DIR in DIR-CPO-TMP-563 for DBITs or deliverables-based IT services. So that is not covered here. Wireless phones, including smartphones, are not covered by this solicitation. Internet services, data plans, managed print services, or professional or consulting services as defined by Chapter 2254 of the Texas Government Code. All of those will not be included. Next slide, please. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Laura to talk about the hub subcontracting plan and that component of the solicitation.
Thank you, Jared. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Sadate, and I'm one of the hub coordinators here with DIR. The hub subcontracting plan, or the historically underutilized subcontracting plan, HSP, is a required portion for all submitted proposals. Please visit the link provided on this slide for the most current approved version of the HSP. This form is owned and controlled by the Comptroller of Public Accounts, so please do not modify the form. Don't modify the format. It is an editable or fillable PDF form. The DIR supports the historically underutilized business program and encourages all respondents to seek out active hub vendors when using subcontractors or when needing subcontracting for portions of their RFO response. As I said just previously, all respondents, hub and non-hub, are required to submit a compliant HSP. Failure to submit a completed signed HSP with your proposal will cause your proposal response to be rejected and not evaluated at all. This is a pass-fail item. I know it wasn't included in the percentages that Jared just spoke about, but it will not let your proposal go through evaluation. By visiting the link on the previous slide and downloading the HSP form, you'll see that the form has specific instructions on how to satisfy one of the 3 good faith effort options. There are 3 ways to complete the HSP, and we're going to get into more detail in the following slides. Vendors must complete a new HSP and perform a new good faith effort to accompany their proposal for this procurement. So one of the 3 ways to complete your HSP is to meet or exceed the hub goal. The hub goal that is set for this RFO is 21%. If your proposed subcontracting meets or exceeds the hub goal of 21%, you will be completing method A, and it's also known as attachment A. Be sure to identify all of the hub and non-hub vendors you're going to be subcontracting with and include anticipated dollar amounts and expected percentages. Just to be clear, if you plan to submit your HSP meeting or exceeding the goal for this RFO, you will be completing sections 1, 2, and 4 of the HSP, as well as method A, attachment A. Please remember to sign and date your HSP in section 4. If you plan to subcontract below the hub goal of 21%, you'll be completing both pages of method B. To satisfy this method, you'll need to solicit at a minimum 3 applicable active hub vendors, as well as 2 minority and/or women trade organizations. Typically, people provide the written notification as an email. Within the body of your notification or email, you must provide a 7 business day, deadline to respond to your subcontracting opportunity prior to the date of this RFO. The date of this RFO, the deadline is February 28th. So you're going to want to back up at least 7 business days to make sure that you send out the email with plenty of time. Please note the day that the emails are sent is considered day 0. Holidays and weekends do not count. So President's Day in the middle of February will not count. So to make sure that that's on your radar. Please be sure to include any emails and other supporting documentations to these entities as proof of your good faith effort when you submit your HSP with your other proposal documents. If you plan to subcontract and your hub utilization is less than 21%, you will be completing section 1, 2, and 4 of the HSP and both pages of method B, attachment B. Again, be sure to identify all hub vendors you're going to be subcontracting with, include any anticipated dollar amounts as well as the expected percentages, and be sure to provide a signature in section 4. The third way to complete your HSP is to self-perform. And if your company can complete the entire scope of work that Jared has just outlined with your company's materials, equipment, and W-2 employees, you would be completing section 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the HSP. In your section 3, the self-performing justification, you would identify how your company will fulfill this contract with your W-2 staff, equipment, resources, etc. Please do not mention the possibility of future subcontracting if needed. Instead, just tell us how you are currently able to self-perform. To conclude my section, please remember that the HSP is a pass or fail portion of your proposal. The hub team would be happy to provide a courtesy review of your HSP. Please contact us here at DIR at the email provided on this page at least 10 days prior to the due date. So 10 days prior to February 28th, so that we can have time to review your HSP and provide you any needed feedback if there's portions you need to tweak. Are there any hub or HSP related questions? I don't see any. If after this presentation you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to the hub team. We're here to help you. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Jared.
Thanks, Laura. And to highlight what Stu is saying, please take advantage of that resource. I can't tell you how many times we've had vendors disqualify themselves by sort of tripping up on the hub subcontracting plan, and they're there to help. So I'd recommend taking advantage of that resource if you have any questions or you're unfamiliar with that process. So from there, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the price sheet, Exhibit D. Next slide, please. So product and service pricing. You'll have to submit pricing on our automated pricing form in the bid stamp vendor information system. Failure to respond as instructed can result in your offer being disqualified from further evaluation. So you'll have to submit your discounts in the automated pricing form in bid stamp by selecting Create Pricing Form button. It'll So for this RFO, you'll enter one line and allow the system to accept your response submission. So we say down here, your bid stamp field will include product category discount off MSRP, but there will be other fields you'll need to enter. Just enter your pricing in there line by line. Next slide, please. So you'll also need to complete the included in the RFO, your itemized price sheet, Exhibit D. Exhibit D has 4 tabs, has instructions, products and related services, volume discounts, and cloud services. So you'll want to enter your prices for each item that you'd like to offer our customers within the applicable tabs. For certain products, you may need to submit a VPAT or ACR document. Also, some of the elements that are required for your pricing sheet, tabs 2 and 3, are product and service category, product and service description, the MSRP or list price, the discount being offered, and the DIR customer price. And I will say for the DIR customer price, there's a formula in there that will calculate that for you. Next slide, please. And the elements required for the volume discount pricing tab. So product and service category, the type of volume. So is it by quantity? So the example here is 1 to 99 units is such an additional discount. 100 to 500 units would be such and such additional discount, so on and so forth. And then you'll have to list, obviously, the DIR customer discount off of MSRP or list price. And this down here at the bottom is just saying what I already stated, which was there's a calculation made by the spreadsheet that will factor in the DIR customer price, including fees. So next slide, please. This will be really quick. So attachments 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the sample documents that we're including. So the sample contract, Appendix A, which is our terms and conditions, the services agreement template, the master lease agreement template, and the master operating lease agreement template. Next slide. I think this might just be a duplication. So if you are submitting exceptions, or you're submitting say, for example, you have a services agreement that you use and you want to submit that for review, you can do that. But I would say be careful. Respondents' response can be disqualified if your exceptions are excessive. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marie, who's going to talk about our electronic and information resources accessibility forms.
Thank you, Jared. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Marie Cohan. I am the statewide Digital Accessibility Program Administrator. I'm going to talk about digital accessibility or electronic and information resources accessibility and what the requirements are with your response. Next slide, please. So under Texas Government Code 2054, we have state agencies and institutions of higher education must procure EIR that complies with the accessibility standards defined in TAC. And we've provided links there if anyone requests this presentation. And basically the TAC, the statute, and best practices that we follow align with federal requirements for procurement. So we just want to make sure that what we're purchasing is meeting accessibility requirements, at least at the base level. There is documentation that we require, and I'll go into more detail on that documentation. Next slide, please. Let's see. So the accessibility documentation, there's 3 of them, and you won't need to submit all 3. It'll depend on what is in your response. The accessibility conformance report is created when a product owner completes a VPAT. The VPAT is it's basically an assessment of a product and how it tested against WCAG success criteria. We look through those VPAT responses of how the product supports the requirements stated in WCAG 2.0 AA. Once that VPAT is completed with those results, it's considered an accessibility conformance report. We require that an ACR be submitted for every single product. Even if, for example, it's a smartphone with a particular company, the different versions of or models of the smartphone would have their own ACR. Let's see. The Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request, or VADSR, is a form for development services. And so we look for this it has questions on there about the company's development life cycle, kind of their practices, any corrective action plans that would be needed, some samples of their work. So we require this for any kind of development response. This is not tied to a product. And then the policy-driven adoption for accessibility, or PDAA. This is a document that was developed in cooperation with NASCIO. This is a self-assessment of your organization's accessibility maturity. This document is not tied to a product or a service. It is an independent document. It is a self-assessment purely of the organization. So there are questions on there that you will score from 0 to 3. And this helps us understand where you are in your accessibility journey. It'll just help us see if you've got training for your staff, if you've got, documented processes in place, what kind of corrective actions you have if something, is not accessible. Again, those types of questions. So these are the documents that are required with your procurement. If it is an electronic and information resources procurement and it does not have a PDAA, that is required regardless of the product, regardless of the service. If a PDAA is incomplete or missing, it could potentially disqualify the response. Next slide, please. So this goes into a little bit more detail about the VPAT, and there's a template included in your packet or in the solicitation. It is required for products such as SaaS, PaaS, and any managed services. It does follow or align with revised Section 508 technical standards. We do request that you use the VPAT version 2.3 or higher. If you have a product to submit that is on an older VPAT, the product cannot have gone under any type of changes that will affect the user interface since April of 2020. So if there is a product out there, which it's getting slimmer these days that's chances going to happen, but if there is a product that is under an old VPAT and the product has not undergone any changes whatsoever that impact the user interface, then the older VPAT can be submitted. Anyone can complete a VPAT. It does not need to be the manufacturer. We prefer that the VPAT is completed by someone that's very knowledgeable of the product and understands how the product tested against the WCAG success criteria. Resellers should get VPATs either from the manufacturer or someone that knows the product very well. They will have to submit an ACR for every single product that's on their reseller list. And again, the VPAT is a template. Once it's completed and shows how the product tested against WCAG success criteria, it is known as an accessibility conformance report, and that is what we'll be looking for. Next slide, please. The Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request is a DIR document that we require for all development services. This helps us understand the company's practices around development services, what kind of corrective actions will be taken if there are any errors or non-compliance, and what kind of alternate accommodations can be made for users if there is a non-compliance issue. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Any type of development, or if it's going to be enough customization that it's going to really impact the user interface, a VATSR will need to be included. Next slide. Thank you. The policy-driven adoption for accessibility, or PDAA, addresses the maturity of the accessibility programs at the organizational level. So again, this is not tied to a product. This is not tied to a service. This is specifically a self-assessment of your organization and your accessibility practices within that organization. It helps us understand where you are on your maturity journey when it comes to accessibility. And this is something that can be updated over time because, organizations grow and change over time. So we do like to keep PDAAs as accurate as possible. And this is going to have an Excel file attached. You will complete the actual Excel file that's in your packet and submit that. Again, if this is missing from an EIR procurement, it could result in disqualification. Next slide, please. These are resources for your use. If you have any questions, there's a lot of helpful information here, especially on the DIR website, which is the very first link. And then next slide, please. We have a new program that we are rolling out. We are now providing accessibility training for all of our vendors. If you are interested in attending this training, there is no cost for it. These are the courses that are included in the training. And you can email me at statewide.accessibility@dir.texas.gov and request a registration link. Next slide, please. This is my contact information. I can also be reached at marie.cohan@dir.texas.gov. If you reach out to me with an accessibility question, please copy the contract manager in charge of this procurement. Thank you so much. And I believe, let's see who's next. I'm going to pass it on to the.
That'll be me.
Okay, thanks, Jared.
Yeah, thank you. And again, if y'all need any help with any of that, please take Maria up on that offer. They can really help you get through this. It's easier to have somebody sort of guide you through it sometimes. Okay, so general information and bid submittal. So let's go to the next slide, please. So just to go through this quickly, reference the RFO page number and section number when submitting your questions. It makes it a lot easier for us whenever we're providing our responses and posting them on the ESBD to have them organized, and it helps us to find the specific language that you may be asking about. Same thing with exceptions, I would say. Webinar participants can submit questions electronically at any time during the webinar. So again, down at the bottom, please feel free to submit any questions you have. Questions answered today, as I said earlier, are unofficial until posted on the ESBD in the form of an addendum. Also check the ESBD often for updates, because there may have been an addendum that was posted that changed some of the language. Sometimes an issue is brought to our attention and we address it. So make sure that you're checking that frequently. Again, all questions regarding the RFO must be submitted in writing through the Bid Stamp Vendor Information System portal by February 4th, 2023 at 5:00 p.m. And I will say that doesn't include questions here. So if we have questions, we'll get a report from this session. And so any questions that we receive will also include those in our answers. Next slide, please. Also, disqualification of offers. So this is the doom and gloom. Failure to sign your respondent information form Exhibit A can result in disqualification. Failure to complete financial information or provide your DUNS number. Failure to complete a hub subcontracting plan. Failure to complete and submit Exhibit D, your itemized pricing sheet. Failure to submit on or before the due date and time. Please give yourself plenty of time to submit. We have had issues occur in the past. and you want to make sure you have plenty of time. This is very important, contacting DIR employees regarding this RFO other than designated contacts can result in disqualification. So for this solicitation, I am the designated contact, so there should be no contact with anybody else, management or other contract developers or procurement leads. Delivery of offers. So any vendor responding to the RFO must submit their response through the bid stamp vendor information portal. Just make sure you're submitting it through there, all of your documents. Next slide, please. And so respondents and all respondent representatives shall not attempt to discuss. We put this in here multiple times so that you're aware of this RFO with any employees or representatives of the DIR other than designated contacts. Failure to observe this restriction may result in disqualification of any related response. Just to repeat. Next slide, please. So in line with that, the contacts for inquiries regarding this RFO are myself. Contacts for the following topics are for the vendor information portal. You can contact Stephanie Harrison, and you'll hear from her in just a minute. For Hub subcontracting plan questions, you can contact Laura at the email below. And again, these slides are going to be posted to the ESBD in an addendum. So if you need to reference these, you can. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Harrison to go over bid submittal.
Afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about your bid submittal and how do you get your response to us through DIR. So as you heard Jared say, any respondent submitting a response to this RFO must submit the response through the bid stamp vendor information system, or the bid stamp VIS. Before, this is very important, please note this part, before you can access any of the bid stamp portion functionality, you must set up a bid stamp login credentials. This is a manual approval process on the last time, so please don't wait until the last minute or the day of to go and create your account, because it may not get pushed through in time for you to get approved and upload your documents. So you will need to go to this link and actually create an account and request credentials. If you do not have login credentials, you'll be directed to click on "Are you a vendor and need to request an account?" If you already have a BidStamp account, like you've set one up for a previous submission, you can use the same account. But if you haven't, you need to go and set up your account now. There's a video on how to set up your BidStamp account at the following link, which is on the DIR website. Next slide, please. Any person with a disability who seeks accommodation under the American Disabilities Act in order to respond to the solicitation may contact DIR, the point of contact. That's Jared's point of contact in section 3.1 of the solicitation. Please allow at least 5 business days for a response for that exception. Next slide, please. So how do you get to the BidStamp portal? On the DIR website, when you go to the, you search "I am a vendor," and it will take you to a tile for selling through DIR. Next slide, please. Scroll down a little bit on that way, and then you can get through the schedule of solicitation opportunities. Again, these slides will be posted, so you'll have the walkthrough step by step on how to get there. Click next slide, please. Then on the schedule of solicitation opportunities page, there is a button for BidStamp online solicitation portal. This is where you would go to either log in or create your, if you need to create your account, you're going to click the button right to the right of that, which is request credentials for BidStamp access. If you already have your BidStamp account, you would click on the one on the left, BidStamp online solicitation portal. Next slide, please. Once there, you have your login page. Your username is going to be the email that you created, and then your password. If you forgot your password, it's been a while since you've submitted anything, you can click your enter your username and click on forgot password, and it'll send you the reset for your password. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So then once you're logged in, oh, sorry, back one. Once you're logged in, you'll click on the open solicitations. At my account, open solicitations, my responses, that's all Bitstamp. The 3 tiles below that will take you back out to the DIR website. So next slide. When you click on open solicitations, it'll list all of the open RFO numbers that are available for response currently through DIR that are posted in Bitstamp. The solicitation number for the IBM Panasonic Fujitsu branded RFO is DIR-CPO-TMP-565. So you would click on that. Next slide, please. And that's going to take you to the main page within your Bitstamp account. You want to make sure you're looking at the correct RFO number there on the left. And then right there in the red, that's the information that we post that you can view. So there's nothing for you to do there other than view information. The buttons at the top, respond to solicitation, ask a question, subscribe to solicitation, and view solicitation documents. We'll discuss those a little bit more on the next page. And then that RFO questions is where whenever you submit your questions through the portal, a running list of the questions that you submitted will populate in that section. You won't be able to see all the questions that everybody else submits, but the ones submitted through your account will populate in that RFO question section. Next slide, please. So the respond to solicitation button, once you've started responding, that one will change to view response. So you can start a solicitation, you can start a response at any time and then go back and finish it before the due date in time for submission in order for your response to be accepted. So if you do once you start a response, you go back into it, it'll say view response. It'll allow you to resume your progress on whatever you're submitting for the RFO response. The Ask a Question button lets you submit any questions to be viewed by DIR. The questions submitted prior to the due date, which I believe is 2 days from now, will be considered for the Addendum 1 for the RFO. Questions that are submitted after that date will actually still appear, but it's up to DIR's discretion on whether or not we respond to those questions if you submit past the deadline for the question and answer period. Subscribe to solicitation button allows you to receive notifications on that solicitation. So if you're wanting to kind of follow and track, you want to hit the subscribe to solicitation. In order to receive the updates for the addendum posting, which we push out a notification through Bitstamp that comes to your email saying there's an addendum, go view it. You'll need to hit the subscribe to the solicitation button and enable your contact to receive notifications. The view solicitation documents navigates you back to the electronic state business daily. That's where all the official documents are posted. That's where all the attachments are for you to download. It's just a quick link that gets you back there. Next slide, please. This slide here is kind of an overview of what you'll see on your end. So once you're in the account, you've started your submission, your submission. This is the screen that'll pop up. You have a delete, a submit, ask a question, create pricing form. The Add a Hub subcontracting form button is actually not there anymore because we've removed that from the electronic process. The Hub subcontracting form, you'll need to use the one that's on the comptroller's website that Laura talked about earlier. So we disabled this one, so you're using the latest and greatest forms. But you have the delete, submit, ask a question, create the pricing form. Some of the information on here, again, is a repeat of what you saw before you ever started submission. It just gives you the generic information for the solicitation, like the due date and time, the name of solicitation, the RFO number. You'll want to be sure that the delete button, that's an actual delete of the information that's been submitted. If you want to remove your response after submission, there'll be a button after you submit that gives you a withdrawal option. You'll need to actually go in and withdraw that response. We do have that happen occasionally, like if a company gets bought out by another company during the process and the new company is not wanting to move forward with a potential contract award, they'll go in and withdraw their response. The submit submits the response to DIR only if you are submitting before the time and date that it's due. At 2:01 on the date, 2:01 Central Time, on the date that it's due, that button will no longer be there. And we get a lot of people at the last minute that are emailing me and saying, oh, mine's not working, mine's not working. No, it's working. It just disables you from submitting your proposal at that time. So pay attention to the time zone that you're in when you're submitting, because these are all Central Time deadlines. The ask a question, I've kind of been over that already. That allows you to submit a question for consideration prior to the due date and time. You'll be able to see the questions that you submitted. The create a pricing form, you'll need to follow the instructions on how to create the pricing form. This allows you to enter your information that's required in the RFO. The RFO response documents, this one is actually a little bit modified from the way it looks now. So you'll be able to submit your RFO documents in there. We have a few lists within the RFO that tells you exactly what's required, how it needs to be submitted. Your Exhibit A, of course, has to be signed. Your HUB subcontracting plan has to be signed. You have to submit a PDAA. If any of those documents are missing, you're already going to be disqualified before we ever get to an evaluation phase. So make sure you have all the requirement documents and their information in there. You'll also be able to select on a drop-down box menu, like the name of the document, and you'll be able to see how you actually loaded it, what your name is. Make sure those match. So if you think you're submitting the Exhibit A, make sure you look over and you're actually submitting the Exhibit A in your documents. We've actually had to disqualify people before that they think they've labeled it Exhibit A, but what they actually submitted was a duplicate Exhibit C, and we can show them really quick, like, you know, you didn't submit the Exhibit A, and that's a disqualifier. The vendor references button allows you to send the vendor reference form from Bitstamp out to your references. It does not track whether they got it. It does not track whether they sent it back to us or not. It's a quick place where you can send them the form. You'll need for them, if you're sending it from Bitstamp, to fill out that top part on your behalf. So it's an option. You don't have to use the vendor reference form from here. I actually recommend that you email it out to your references. You can do a read receipt or whatever to make sure they at least got it. And then you'll want to fill out the top part of that vendor reference form before you send it out, so it has your information on it. So when we get those reference forms back from your professional reference, that it's associated with the correct potential respondent. Next slide, please. Just to go over the response contents, this is located within several spots within the RFO, but you must have the Exhibit A, and that has to be signed. The signing of that certifies that your entity is willing to accept all the certifications that are in there, and has to be signed by somebody who has the authority to bind your entity to a contract with the state. Your Exhibit A, cancel contracts attachment 1, if that's applicable, needs to be included. The Exhibit B, respondent history and experience, that is a score document, so that has to be included if you want the possibility of getting the maximum points. Same thing on Exhibit C, that one must be included. Both of those, if they have any additional attachments, please read through that thoroughly and make sure those are included. Your Exhibit D, your itemized price sheet, is required. Your Exhibit E, vendor references, those are required. Those do have to come from the reference to DIR. Your Exhibit F, respondent release of liability for reference, that is required. Your VPAP form are required on the applicable areas. Next slide, please. Your Exhibit H, VETIR, that is required if it's applicable. The PDAA Exhibit I is required for everybody, regardless of what you're proposing. The Exhibit J, your HUB subcontracting plan, is required for everybody, regardless of whether you're a prime or you're a HUB vendor. If you're submitting as a prime, you have to submit a HUB subcontracting plan. Failure to submit a HUB subcontracting plan will automatically disqualify you from the very beginning before you ever get to evaluation. Your Exhibit K is the ECHR certification form, And then if you have manufacturer letters, if you're not the manufacturer and you're submitting as a reseller, you have to have the manufacturer letters of authorization, any applicable license agreements, service agreements, any exceptions. And then when we post the addenda, there will be a page in there for you to sign the acknowledgement that you have received that addenda. And that is also a part of your submission. Next slide, please. In section 3.9 of the RFO, DIR has the sole discretion authority and reserves the right to reject any and all responses received as a result of this RFO. Responses that do not comply with this mandatory submission requirements may be rejected. In addition, DIR reserves the right to accept or reject in whole or in part any response submitted and to waive minor technicalities when in the best interest of the state. So basically, that is a lot of lingo jargon to say that DIR has the final determination on whether or not a response will be rejected or accepted. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Jared.
Thank you very much. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, allow you to submit any remaining questions you may have. Again, whenever you are submitting a question, please make sure you're referencing the section number and page number, or I will say whether you're submitting them in this conference or whether you're submitting them to the vendor information system to be answered in our addendum, please make sure you're referencing the page number and section number. Again, questions answered today are unofficial until posted on the ESBD, and you can submit any other questions that you think of tomorrow or later on prior to the 4th at 5 o'clock. In the bid stamp vendor information system. So with that, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we will see you shortly.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and conclude the end of this conference. We didn't have any additional questions that came in. I saw the 3 that came in previously. They were all answered. So these will be included in the addendum, which will include also these slides and the attendee list. There was a question about incumbent details. Those are all available on the DIR website. You can search by searching the previous solicitation number, DIR-CPO-TMP-565. The link to that was also included in the answer. There was a question to see if we could provide the contract value for this opportunity. So these are all $0 contracts where DIR is awarding master contracts for the DIR eligible customers, and the spend under those contracts was previously provided on slide 6. There was also one more question about, do cloud products need to be TexRep certified in order to respond to this RFO? So in order to respond, no, you do not need to be certified. However, all cloud computing services sold to state agency, institutions of higher ed, and public community colleges, customers must comply with TexRamp requirements. So before you can sell to them, your cloud offerings have to be TexRamp certified, and that's per the Texas Government Code 2054.003. Next slide, please. Reminder, any questions answered today are unofficial until posted on the Electronic State Business Daily in the form of an addendum. Any changes or additional information regarding this RFO will be posted as an addendum to the requisition number DIR-CPO-TMP-565 on the Electronic State Business Daily. It is the responsibility of vendors to monitor the ESBD for website for additional addenda. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, the RFO schedule. So the RFO was posted on January 20th. Today, February 2nd, 2023 is the optional pre-proposal webinar. Sorry, February 2nd, 2023. February 4th, 2023 by 5 p.m. Central Time is the deadline for submitting questions. February 10th, 2023 by 5 p.m. is the estimated time frame that we will have the questions posted on the Electronic State Business Daily in an addendum. February 28th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Central Time is the deadline for DIR to receive vendor references from the customers. And it's also the deadline for submitting the response to the RFO through the BidStamp VIS portal. Right after that, we'll start evaluations and negotiations and potential contract awards. Next slide, please. Please remember, all questions and inquiries must be directed to Jared Fortenberry. Jared's email is here. Please do not talk to anybody else about the RFO except for in those particular situations where we have provided subject matter experts for you for the hub performance. Also for the EIR questions, Marie can only answer questions about EIR. Our hub team can only answer questions about hub. And then for any BidStamp related questions, those will come to me, Stephanie Harrison. And then Jared is your primary and your only contact for the RFO. All right. Looks like we had one question that came in just now. I'm going to read it and see if I can answer it here. With the vendors bidding direct, how do resellers respond to this RFO? Will they be able to bid in addition to the primary vendors, or will they be added as resellers under the vendor direct contract? That's actually a really good question. So authorized resellers and or the manufacturers can respond as prime. You will actually need to work with the manufacturer to see which one that you qualify for with that specific manufacturer. Some of them will want to add you as a reseller on their prime contract through their hub subcontracting plan, and some of them will allow you to be both a prime reseller and a reseller, a prime reseller respondent with a reseller's letters of authorization, and then also be a reseller on their prime contract. So those agreements need to be worked out with the manufacturer if you're a reseller in advance. So get to work on that now if you have not started those relationships. You can also be added potentially be added as a reseller to a contract post award for a prime vendor that has received a contract either as a manufacturer or a reseller. So it's odd, but resellers can have authorized resellers if that's all approved through the manufacturer letters of authorization. All right, and that was everything that we have. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to conclude. Hopefully everybody stays safe and warm the rest of the day. Thank you.